What's up, people? You're on air with the Political Millennials,
Hi, my name's Lewis.
and I'm Justin.
Today we're going to be talking about right-wing terrorism.
So we'll try to keep it about an hour, as most of our episodes. We'll have some tangents. We've already recorded the episode, so we have a couple of tangents, but I think they're interesting. And then we'll also touch at the end of our next episode, which we're not going to tell you the subject of yet because we want you to listen.
Yes, we have our Twitter information, our YouTube information down there. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter, YouTube. Message us on our personal Facebooks, on our personal
If you
Twitters.
can find us.
Yeah, we have a link on there.
You can find me by my name, I'm sure, but Lewis will be a little harder.
Yeah, I'll be harder. There's like 50 million of me, so. All right, let's get into it. All right, today is January 7th of the new year, 2018. I have with me Justin, my coworker.
Hello.
And we are starting a new podcast called The Political Millennials. Our hopes are to kind of get out the political side of politics. You know, we want to get it to the millennials. We want to get it to the young people. We don't want it to be something that you only do if you are working for that. Because this runs all of our lives. It affects every single one of us individually and as a whole. Our lives become better or worse based on what laws are passed in Washington.
It is important, and it isn't scary. So, it's something that everybody can get into. It's something that everybody has an opinion on. And it's good to help young people, the millennials, not necessarily young people, but get into this so that we can form the world that we want to live in for the rest of our lives. Because really, I mean, if you look at politics, it's all old people.
Yeah,
and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's
tons of old
50
people.
plus, and they deserve every opinion that they have, and they deserve the right to speak it, but they won't be here when we will be in the future.
Yes.
So it should be our world to form.
Yes, and a lot of the thing is, like you're saying, it's very important for young people to get involved because we are living in the world that we're trying to change. We're trying to make it what we want to be. Have to worry about, you know, this problem or that problem or something, bringing in kids to this world. We don't have to worry about creating problems and not being able to, number one, sustain life. I would say for millennials, one of the biggest things is climate change, you know. I could say right off the bat.
That's a hoax, Lewis.
Of course, we're quoting Trump there. So Justin, one thing we always talk about in politics is I would say the fear mongering of jihadism. What opinions do you have on that?
Well, it is an issue, definitely, as is anything that causes death in America. But that being said, it doesn't cause as many deaths as our main topic, which does relate, and that's kind of the thing, though. You wouldn't really think about it, and you wouldn't really think that it's a thing. But it is, and of course we're talking about right-wing people committing terrorism of violence, and I think something that we haven't even really prepped for, vocal terrorism. Something that they are the meanest people.
Yeah,
in my opinion. And if you're a right-winger, we love you, but just listen and see if any of this applies to you. And you don't even have to be a right-winger, left-winger, moderate, liberal.
You're allowed to
anything.
express your opinions, but like you're saying, vocal terrorism, to what extent? To what extent are you not only harming somebody physically, but what harm do you do mentally, to this person with the words you say, psychologically?
And look, nobody wants to get rid of free speech.
Of course not, no.
It's the First Amendment for a reason, but that doesn't make everything you say a good thing, and that doesn't make everything you say not have consequences with people. So that's the big thing, is you can say it, but should you? Yeah. And if somebody says this, you can't just scoff off and say, well, he has the right to say it, and just ignore it, because these do have real life consequences on people.
Yeah, we see a lot of it, with the buildup of social media, with the Twitters and Instagrams and Facebooks of the world. Everybody kind of hides behind a mask, Nobody has to be their true self, and with that becomes the left extremists and the right extremists, if you want to call it. We'll be fair to both sides. But you definitely see a lot more right-wing trolls. And with that comes a lot more violence and hate, at least in my eyes, that I see.
Well, if you don't believe us, Lewis, what is a a mocking term for somebody on the left?
I mean, if you're
a right winger and you're making fun of a left winger, libtard.
Yeah, you call him a libtard.
That's the main one I think of. But what word do we use for conservatives? Nothing. We don't
because
we don't come up with them.
No, we don't have them.
And by we, I mean we're on the left. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But we as in millennials, which are vastly left, don't really come up with words for conservatives. I mean,
I just think it's kind of their thing. They've always been into the labeling and the fear mongering of it. You know, we've seen it with people, we've seen it with plants, we've seen it with crimes. You know, we've seen it everywhere. And the only way I guess I see the right wing controlling people a lot of the times through history was through fear. You know, if you make somebody afraid of something, or if you make somebody believe in something, they're that much more susceptible to not so much brainwashing. I don't want to say brainwashing because that's kind of rude, but
all politics is brainwashing.
Yeah.
So part of what we would want to do for y'all is to give you an open mind. You can have whatever opinion you want. That's great. That's your right, and we respect that. But we want the opinions that you form to be educated on facts and just overall well-meaning. Just being a good person and doing what's best for everybody, not just you. There's selfishness in politics.
Yeah.
And there should be. Everybody has the right to be selfish, but there are other people that are affected that don't have a voice. So
yes,
I think we're obviously going to talk about right-wing terrorism as opposed to Islamic terrorism. I do have some charts I want to show later of black and white crime, because I want to stress that this isn't a racial issue sometimes, because there's blacks that are on the right, and there's whites on the right, and there's blacks on the left and whites on the left.
The easiest thing to push is race. So, you know, you see a lot of that in the arguments people have of Facebooks or in the workplace, you know, whether or not this race creates and dominates in crime, or who's more susceptible to being hurt by who. We see that a lot in our society today.
So with that, we'll just start with the first graphic on the top. This is from realnews.org, and we're going to put these, hopefully, graphs up on the screen. This is our first time, so we might have some trouble, but bear with us. We'll hopefully put these graphs on the screen so you can see them. This is a screenshot, so it's not the best, but just some statistics. From January 2008 to the end of 2016, we identified, and by we, it's revealnews.org, 63 cases of Islamic domestic terrorism, meaning incidents motivated by theocratic political ideology espoused by such groups as the Islamic State. So these are people that are Islamic and were claimed by the Islamic State as in ISIS. That's just the one example. There's tons, Al-Qaeda and all that as well.
So 63 in 8 years?
63 in 8 years, that's, I can't do math in my head, but that's not very much. That's like 80 a year.
Yeah, 80 a year.
So 76% of those 63, which again, I can't do math in my head, were foiled, which means that they didn't even carry out the attack. It was a plan, which either the FBI or the police stopped them. During that same period, we, revealnews.org, found that right-wing extremists were nearly twice as many incidents at 115. Over a third of those were foiled. So only 35% of right-wing ones were foiled. I guess we could stop there and say why. Why is there a vastly less amount of foiled plots on the right? Do you think it's FBI focus, or do you think it's the news calling to less people looking out for right-wingers, or do you think it's they're smarter and they know how to carry it out better?
I think it has a lot to do with people being on alert. You see it a lot, and it has to do with, sadly, a lot of people's prejudices. Want to be afraid. It's what we've been pushed, and it's what we've been taught ever since 2001. It's what the agenda has always been. Me personally, I have never dealt with people of Middle Eastern descent, but that doesn't make me feel as if I need to treat them any less than people I interact with on a daily basis. At the end of the day, everybody's human, and I think our prejudices help us a lot in foiling those versus the right wing. People go under the radar. We see it so many times. Not too recently, When was it that there was the shootings
Of the two cops
shootings of two cops
by a right winger, which relatively got some news, rightfully so, and it's pretty big. But I guarantee you, if you ask, I like to use the Times Square example because a lot of news places do it, and a lot of late night shows do it. They'll go to Times Square and they'll just ask people. I guarantee you, a lot of them probably didn't hear about it, but if you ask them about the guy in the bus station or the subway station with the bomb that didn't kill anybody, not even himself, everybody heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Rightfully so. It's news, and it should be.
It's news, definitely.
But it's a vast.
It's a difference in coverage,
right?
And at that point, you wonder, why is it that we focus so much on one than the other?
So the next question would be: should we focus more on Islam because they're more deadly? And so onto that same graphic, the next two bullet points prove that that's not correct. Right-wing extremist terrorism was far more deadly. Nearly a third of incidents involved fatalities for 79 deaths, while 13% caused fatalities. The total deaths associated with Islamist incidents were higher, however, reaching 90, largely due to the 2000 mass shooting in Fort Hood. And we can't throw one incident out to say, well, if you take out 9/11, they didn't kill a lot of people, because that's, a mass shooting is more news than a two-person shooting.
Of course. Yeah.
So you have to include the Fort Hood, but 79 deaths and only 13% of Islamists were fatalities. So
it's a pretty
79 out of 115 versus 13% of 63, which again I can't do math in my head, but that's quite a bit of a difference.
That's a big difference there. That's a huge difference.
Why do you think they're more violent on the right? Because I don't think they have any more access to anything.
Yeah, it's not like one side has this or the other side has that. I just think when you talk about right wing, you usually just see, and it's weird to say right wing, because like we've talked about before, the radicalists of Islam that everybody wants to be afraid of, they are technically the right wing of
Islam.
Of Islam, exactly. The people focused on culture and back in the days, and this race is better than that race, superiority. And here in the United States, we don't have a single race, so there's everybody. You don't have a specific look-alike for a conservative. Of course, you can use stereotypes.
There are, I would say, percentage-wise, more Caucasians on the right, but I don't have numbers to back that up, so take that with a grain of salt.
Agreed.
I would just say based off of inference of seeing them, but I've obviously seen some Fox News clips, and there's black people, there's Mexican ladies, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say, based off of my inference, which of course is based off of nothing but my inference, I would say there's a lot of Caucasians there compared to the left.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's an interesting question, and there is a left-wing bullet point in here because we don't want to leave them out. Incidents related to left-wing ideologies included eco-terrorism and animal rights. So this isn't even on humans, but the planet and animals are just as just to have safety as a human. They were completely rare, with 19 causing 7 fatalities. So only 7, and by reading that I assume animals, but only 7 fatalities out of 19 incidents in 8 years compared to 63 and 115. And then the last bullet point I'll just read off: nearly half of Islamist incidents in our database were sting operations, more than 4 times the rate for far right or far left. So they set up stings on Islamics 48% of the time compared to 12 or 10% on left and right and left. So you obviously can see by the numbers that they do favor Islam terrorism, either in the FBI or whoever's carrying out these things, local law enforcement and whatnot.
That's a really outstanding difference there. A 30% increase of watching, and it reminds me a lot of that stop and frisk that happened in New York and Arizona.
Let me ask you this: have you ever seen a movie with stop and frisk? Did they ever stop and frisk white people?
No, never. I mean, it never happens. Me personally, it's happened to me.
Okay, so we'll disclose: Lewis is Hispanic and I'm white.
Yes, yeah.
So I have never once been stopped and frisked. I've never once been looked at wrong by a cop. I've never once I've been pulled over for like expired inspection stickers. So I've never experienced any of this, though I do know it is real.
Yes,
because I've heard stories.
Definitely, it is real, and like you said, being Hispanic male, I've lived in the lower income neighborhoods of my town, and even going out of state, being treated differently by police there. And,
I will say, being Texan, if you go to Oklahoma, you'll get pulled over more.
Oh, of course, yeah. There's a little bit.
And that's just like neighboring states.
That's us just being shitty humans. We hate each other.
Well,
one another.
that is on the racial side, but we have kind of already disclosed that we feel like white people are more on the right.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, there's some charts here of numbers of incidents and charges being filed against them. So, if you just go on, just looking at 2A, the first one, number of incidents from 2016, so same time period, there's more acts of right wing than Islamist acts and foiled combined. Just my first inference. And then you got the foiled on top of that, which goes up to, like we said, 119.
That's pretty incredible.
And this is the same source.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the Investigative Fund, which have provided these charts, the data from. This is from them. I looked them up, and I highly recommend you going to the Investigative Fund.
What's their website, Justin?
I believe it's investigativefund.org.
Okay.
But
theinvestigativefund.org.
It may be, I think it's org. But just Google Investigative Fund. They've got like a little fire emoji as their thing. They're super cool. They seem legit.
This was the one you were looking into, like their donors and their funders.
Yeah.
And
So they
it's a
list their
pretty
donors
legit
and
honest
really,
to God company.
Yeah, they seem pretty good, and they're run, as far as I believe, solely on their donors and donations from their viewers and supporters. So that's cool. But I did want to give them a shout out because they provided these charts with the data for them, and they're telling. So if we go to the next one, and I would like to say acts of Islamist and left wing on that first chart are the same.
Okay.
What that means is I'm not sure, but I do want to point that out because I noticed it before I
left wing, and I wonder why they have it at the exact same number.
But of course they foiled. More Islamic, so they do watch them more than left wing. So
definitely.
So the next chart would be percent of terror incidents in which terror charges were filed. So this is the DA saying, "Look, I think this is terrorism, and we're going to file it in court as terrorism." I don't know if this includes like violent acts and whatnot, but so the Islamists, that looks like 82%, 81 or 82%.
Yeah, about 82%.
Left wing, 64 or so percent, which is crazy because we just saw that they don't even foil many and they barely do any as compared to right wing. And then right wing only gets about 10% of their charges filed as terror.
Sounds like the old "it's all about who you know" kind of.
Yeah, we do know that, and Democrats, Republicans are both this way, but conservatives are run by money. Democrats are run by money. So they do, if they have the right person, the right money from the right person, they can get away with a lot of stuff, as we see with our president today. But
it's incredible that at the 20% of the Islamists, and even at 60% of them being foiled, the number, or I'm sorry, not 60%, the 60 incidents that are being foiled, that they're being charged at an 80% rate.
Right.
That's not leaving anybody off the hook, and
and I'm assuming this includes conspiracy of terror, because
yes, conspiracy.
If you foil it and they don't do it, but
that's gonna be a huge one. You have to find them with some kind of intent, and it's crazy that they're finding these Islamists with 80% of the time being guilty of this.
So this next chart would go to what the acts are, because acts. You can't conspiracy and kill somebody at the same time. So these are acts. Right wing are about 29% of their incidents have fatalities, whereas left wing are at about 11 and Islam are about 13. So
That's really
right
low
wing
for 8
has
years.
a lot more fatality, but they get charged at 10%, which is kind of curious. And then fatalities with domestic terror incidents by number, Islam is at 90. As we said, that Fort Hood plays a lot of factor, but we can't leave it out. Right wing is at about 79.
79.
And left wing doesn't even hit double digits. And they are vastly ahead of right wing in terror charges.
I'm curious. I think we should do more research into the left wing. I want to see what they're considering as the domestic terror incidents. I can't really recall any as of right now. Maybe that's
right.
I'm not too sure. I don't really remember.
Of course, this goes back to 08. I wasn't paying attention to this.
No, yeah, I wasn't. I wasn't thinking about it.
I was just a wee 13-year-old. So
we were young millennials.
Yeah,
we weren't.
So to get the next one is an overall chart by year, which I really liked it, so I included it. It's total incidents by year. Other, I'm assuming, is they either couldn't disclose or couldn't figure out what they were or something like that. But it's so minute, the others, so we'll just ignore that. But if you go to 08, right wing is vastly ahead. Left wing is ahead of Islam at the lowest. 09, right wing and Islam are tied. 2010, right wing starts to show the trend and takes way off over Islam. Left wing still hanging down there at the bottom in the single digits. And then 2011, right wing even more. I'd like to see the pre-Obama numbers.
Okay. Of the right wing?
Right.
Of the right wing.
I didn't look at that. I didn't even think about 08 being Obama year, but I wonder if they went up.
Well, for future reference, we'll get some graphics, of the right wing terror incidents by year. We'll look through the Obama numbers, and I'll put a little graphic on here. It'll pop up right about now.
So if we go to 2012, same trend, Islam higher than left, but right way higher. Same one, 13 inches down overall. 0 for left wing, woot woot, good job. Do that every time. 2014, looks like a middle finger. 2015, same trend, and that same in 16.
What happened in 2014?
Well, what happened every year with right wing? They're high. They're high in every year.
Every single year.
They're at 6 or higher in every year, and when they're not at 6, they're at 9 or higher.
That's some angry people.
I don't get it. So,
what are they? They're so tense about everything. I guess when you're trying to scare everybody, you have to be tense all the time. You're angry all the time, wanting to take it out on people.
So,
which isn't right.
The second source we have for all of this is Huffington Post, which some of y'all probably hate. They seem to be pretty credible in the past. I'm not going to read this whole thing. We can pop it up on the screen, but mainly it just talks about the same numbers that we just listed and the fact that the coverage is more towards the Islam side. Again, I'm not going to read it all because I'll put it up on the screen. If you want to pause, you can read it. But
yeah.
It's just something I decided to throw in because it was kind of interesting.
It is. It talks about the percentages. It says, just a little excerpt of it. It says, the government succeeded in interrupting the vast majority of Islamist extremist terror case since 2008. 76% of the incidents tracked were foiled plots, like we talked about before. 76% of them, they always find out.
And that quote right after, a significant investment of law enforcement resources. When it came to right-wing terrorism, only about a third were interrupted. So the foiled plots by Islam showed a significant investment of law enforcement resources, which obviously leads to the others being lower in foiled plots, but numbers say that there's more attempts. So I would say shift your focus. And then I saw somebody on Twitter. It's kind of got a Nazi thing in there. Homeland Security is restarting a stalled $10 million grant program for countering violent extremism. This is a 6/23/17, so not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
So Life After Hate, dedicated to de-radicalizing neo-Nazis and stopping white extremism, slated to get $400K in the final days of the Obama administration. Before the program was halted for review, the Trump administration dropped them from the new grant list that's getting announced today as of 6/23/17. So, why did he drop that? Wouldn't we want $400,000? That's nothing.
No,
that is no money. That is like that's a quarter. I would give you a quarter to do that. And Trump drops it for whatever reason. The group has seen a 20-fold increase in requests for help since Election Day. So people are asking for help for this, and they're not getting it. Some of the big cities are getting 6-figure grants to fight extremism. And the 400,000 just gets dropped from Trump. I don't understand.
Where does, why just take it away?
And we see this. I don't know if you saw. I'm gonna go to recent news. Trump dropped the AIDS.
I did see that. Yeah, it was
the full AIDS council.
Just he's not gonna name any replacements.
Some odd 1.3 million people in America. Just no more.
It's
no
one
more
of it's one of the biggest things that has plagued the United States, especially in I'd say the past decade or so. AIDS has been a horrendous disease, and to just drop any type of care or research, and there was millions and millions of dollars going into research and funding and prevention and searching for a cure for AIDS, and it just gets dropped.
And the precedent he's set, because he also did the same to opioids, where he declared a war on opioids or a national security threat, but gave no money to it. Yeah, vastly less than 400,000, if I recall. I don't know the exact number, but so he's gotten a track record with this, and I don't understand. I know we're picking on him, but he is a right winger, and he is the topic of this because you see his Twitter, which we're going to reference here in a minute, for a slightly different reason. But he's he's supporting, and I don't want to say he's directly supporting them, but by not giving 400,000 to stop people that still believe in something we destroyed in the 40s.
Yeah,
it's interesting. And so with that, I think the white versus black should be shown because I want to stress this isn't a racial issue. It's pretty straight across for all blacks and whites. We'll just show all 4 charts at the same time. It's really whites killed by blacks and blacks killed by whites. Whites killed by blacks is higher in homicides, but the trend with blacks killed by whites follows the same. It goes up in 13, 14, 15. It spikes in 07 for whatever reason, and it's down in 01. So that's interesting. Interracial homicides are down in the teens. So that's super low. Again, same following graph. Homicide victims by race. Blacks and whites are killed about the same. And white on white and black on black homicides, again, white on whites are high and black on blacks are high, and they follow the same trend. So we kill each other racially about the same as the other races do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a racial issue.
So where does this myth of black on black crime, where does this myth that people throw out there, where does this originate
Well, I mean, if
from?
you look at it, homicides, white on white and black on black crimes, the 4th chart, they're high, but they're not vastly higher than white on white.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they're lower for most of it. So, I mean, yeah, blacks kill whites more than whites kill blacks, but they don't kill each other any more than whites do.
Yeah, it's about the same.
So, I guess we could, before we talk, I mean, we've talked a lot about terrorism and a lot about
do you remember
like that.
Do you remember the first time that terrorism was brought into, and all also, but do you remember the first time that terrorism came off to you as a word? You heard it
as a word. Yeah, I mean, everybody's gonna say 9/11.
Yeah.
Anybody in our age. I was 6 in 2001 when that happened, so you don't have a grasp of the world at 6. The only thing I remember of 9/11 was the announcement over the intercom at school as a first grader, saying, have your kids call your parents, there's been an attack on the country. And I went to the library because that was the student phone was, and I saw it on the TV. And at that point, I saw the headline, "Terrorist attacks America," and I read it, and I didn't think anything of it because I wasn't a good reader. But it was the first time I would say I know in my mind I heard the term, and it was associated with Islam.
Yeah,
rightfully, because it was a terror attack.
Yeah, it was a terror attack. And,
but,
it came from somewhere in the Middle East where people want to have different
opinions. And a lot of the millennials are going to say the same thing about 9/11. So, and I don't want to throw that out because it was a big thing. But if we take 9/11 out, where was the next time you heard it?
Yeah.
And I can't recall. to be honest.
There isn't too many. I can't remember anything as at the same magnitude as 9/11.
Oklahoma City, maybe.
Oklahoma City, I feel like I was.
I know
still
fatalities it wasn't, but
yeah,
in
I was
terms
still
of
a little
news,
bit too young.
And then the right winger that did Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook.
That was the biggest one.
That's where I remember, and the Boston bombing was another where you heard the word terrorist emphasized and repeated over and over, whether it was through the news or just people talking. It was every day, everybody's pushing point. Nowadays, I believe more people relate terrorist with Middle Eastern descent versus anything, in our country, and I don't think that's right.
I don't think there's a debate against that.
There's not. There shouldn't be.
Against your claim that that's what's associated with.
Yeah.
So
too many people think that way.
Let's just define terrorism in our own terms, and then we'll define it what it really is, so that way we can get in a perspective of what our ideals are and what qualifies as terrorism, and then you can see what terrorism is according to the charts, so you can form your own opinion, because that's what we want to do, right? Form our own opinions.
Form our own opinions.
I guess for terrorism for me would be if you use fear, because it is a fear-based thing. They don't want you to go out and have fun. They don't want you to do this because they want you to be scared that they're going to be attacked. That's a pretty good thing, pretty big thing when it comes to terrorism. So using that for personal gain or for the enemy's detriment usually is accomplished by recruiting. You can get domestic activists from overseas using Twitter, like we see a lot with ISIS recruiting people, and with Fox News because they're bad. And then whether it's violent or not, it doesn't matter to me. When it comes to terrorism, you can, like we were talking about vocal terrorism.
Yes, vocal terrorism is.
You can 100% be a terrorist without touching somebody.
So let me take a little side trip here, and we all have the freedom of speech. We all have the First Amendment. This has been in the news with Donald Trump and him saying, the book that was written by him. Who was the author of it?
Michael Wolff.
Michael Wolff.
I've read a sample.
He said that he violated, he went past what the First Amendment should be able to do. He's essentially putting limits on freedom of speech. I don't know what limit should be put on freedom.
So what he's talking about was recent. This is from ABC News, but I want to stress, anytime in the future you hear us talk about Trump or anything, when we quote Trump, the source doesn't matter. Unless it's a source that just blatantly fakes quotes, which would get called out instantly. These are quotes of what he actually said. So you can say this was Breitbart, and it would matter because it's what he said. So I don't want you to say don't look at your sources and don't check your facts. But when it's a quote, I mean, you can't really fake that because you get called out. They had somebody do that, I think. I don't remember the exact instance, but I remember somebody misquoted Obama. And they got fired. I could not tell you the time and place and who, but I remember that off the top of my head. So this is the quote. I think it's a disgrace that somebody's able to have do something like that. This is referring to the book Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff, which came out Friday for us, which was January 4th?
January 4th,
5th, something like that. I don't know. The libel laws, quote, the libel laws are very weak in this country. If they were strong, it would be very helpful. End quote. How? Helpful for who? For us or for him?
Helpful for him for now.
That's that's helpful for him.
Of course.
Because then you don't have bad words said about him. This is quoting the article at ABC News. The president also pushed back on the notion that writer Michael Wolff had extraordinary access to the West Wing, saying he had never sat with Wolff for an interview related to the book, and that the author was never in the Oval Office, which is video proof to dispute, because there is video of him with Trump.
Trump has just caught himself in so many lies.
So I guess we could say, who cares about the First Amendment?
Yeah, I don't, I never get that, and a big topic that I've seen lately is a lot of debate on these social media networks, Facebook and Twitter. You see trolls. We see a lot of trolls, these people that are run anonymously, where they're right-wing, where they say they're Nazis, where they say they're anti-LGBT, whatever it may be, they're racist, they'll put it out there. At what point do these big companies limit free speech? Do they?
It's a fine line.
It's a very fine line.
So we know about the Nazi that dated this girl, I believe in high school.
Oh, yeah.
So she was dating a Nazi. I don't think she knew. She might have. I don't know. I can't get into her mind. But her parents tried to stop it, and so the Nazi went and killed her parents.
Sadly.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct?
Okay. Yeah.
So they found his Twitter handle, and they found all of his activity on social media. It was very, very Nazist.
Very disturbing.
If that's the correct word, Nazist. But he retweeted a whole bunch of pro-Hitler stuff, a bunch of anti-Jews. It makes me sick to read it, so I'm not going to, but it was very disturbing.
He was bragging about convincing one transgender woman to commit suicide, and he joked about convincing two more. He was on the track
with
of convincing two more. You know,
just a little innocent smiley face emoji, and it just turns it into even more disturbing.
And we're talking about this story specifically because it goes in right with the right-wing terrorism. You know, you get this culture, and I want to call it a culture based on faith and religion and old times, and I almost feel it's back when the "Make America Great" slogan, where they perceive it as. You know, when the white man was dominant, and I hate to put it just on white men.
But if you look at you can't argue that this is Trump's standpoint because he directly supported Roy Moore. He supported Roy Moore, who was running for Senate, and he openly said he wanted all the amendments from like 12 onward gone, which is freeing slavery. And he asked when the black lady in the crowd asked her, "When was America great? What time period are you referring to?" He said back during the Civil War, when families were united.
When families were strong, when they were healthy. And
when the black families were getting torn apart and bought.
And the kids were being sent off, and the
super strong.
The mother was
just think about it. Okay. I don't know the president or ambassador of Germany off the top of my head. But if somebody asked him, when was the best time in Germany? And he said in the 40s, when families were strong.
Yeah.
What would you think?
It's hateful. You know, it says a lot about the person.
Families weren't strong. Families were getting torn apart and murdered in front of each other's eyes. Yeah, the German family might have been strong.
The economy might have been a little bit stronger for you, not for everybody in the United States.
I don't know. I can't speak to the economy of Germany then because I don't remember. I'm just saying I don't remember. Even the Civil War economy wasn't the greatest.
Yeah.
So it's one of them things. You can't debate. He supported this guy. I know he supported Luther Strange first, but his other option was a darn Democrat. So you just can't justify that, I guess.
And you saw so many people say that they would rather support a pedophile than a Democrat, and that just blows my mind.
And I'd like to get into that for just a second. Why? I heard an argument why, and I understand it to an extent, but it speaks towards the culture that we're talking about of the right wing. So. We're going to do an abortion show, I'm sure, one of these days. We might even have a guest for that because I have somebody in mind. But I'm not going to go into abortion. But pro-life or pro-choice doesn't really matter in this story. So Doug Jones is pro-choice, as is most Democrats. And when a conservative, which is vastly pro-life, sees a Democrat that is pro-choice, he or she pictures a child killer, somebody that kills children because you have abortions or you support abortion. And I'd like to clarify, pro-choice isn't pro-abortion, but we'll get into that later in that episode. So they see a baby killer. They see somebody that's willing to take lives of innocent babies, and the abortion stance, which I'm torn on, has its own side of pro-life being pro-choice being baby killers. That's, again, we'll touch that later. But that's why they would rather go with somebody that traumatized a kid over somebody that killed a kid.
Yeah.
Whether that mindset is true or not, that's for you to decide. But I'd like to just clarify that Trump did support somebody that has been credibly accused of raping or attempting rape.
And I even heard that one of the people that accused him actually was a victim of an arson fire. Arson being somebody deliberately trying to set your home or business, whatever it is.
They didn't try. They succeeded.
Oh, they succeeded, but just explaining arson there.
So
That was a little tangent.
Yeah, big old tangent.
Big tangent.
It's your turn to define terrorism.
Terrorism. So
that's what we were talking about today.
And like I said, it all ties together. But my personal definition of terrorism is any person or group doing harm on a massive scale. One thing that always comes to my mind when we talk about right-wing terrorism was the Ku Klux Klan. One of the worst times in our nation's history.
That's as terroristic as it gets.
That is, yes, that is.
That's
you can
Nazi
compare
style.
it,
That's
exactly.
up to they would if they had their choice to have a Holocaust, they would have done it.
Yes, and
So-
some can kind of say they tried. Many people believed in ethnic cleansing and being pure and
One thing I want to look up
race.
later is black deaths before, during, and after the era of KKK.
Yeah.
And see how massive it was.
Oh, it
Because I'm
was
just curious.
humongous.
Because obviously there wasn't a Holocaust against blacks, but any death is not a just death. So,
Of course.
so we'll just define terrorism verbatim,
Yeah.
so that we can all be fair, and you can form your own opinion. Obviously, definitions are important, and we want to go by definition because we don't want to just make up a word and say, hey, terrorism is when you get scratched by your cat because you won't feed him. So, actual definition. Quote, the threatened or actual use of illegal force and violence by a non-state actor to attain a political, economic, religious, or social goal through fear, coercion, or intimidation. End quote. So, pretty much that's illegal force or violence by somebody in a non-state for political, economic, religious, or social goal through fear, coercion, or intimidation. So, it's pretty important there. To define that, because that does fit most of our definition. I mean, mine was using fear, and yours was big scale attacks. So those would fit, maybe not verbatim, but they definitely fit into the definition.
Yeah, we can all mold. Everybody's independent thinking, and you can mold it to whatever. It's not fair to mold it to one side versus another, which kind of leads us into our next point. And why do we put so much emphasis on one type of terrorism versus the other? Why is one person's life, who it's being taken from by, so important? Why do we focus on a jihadist versus a 52-year-old Paul?
Is it a well, humans are tribalistic.
What do you mean when you say that?
So humans are they like tribes, they like communities, they like groups, like packs.
Our classification
pack mindset.
system.
So is it that they don't seem like they fit our country, or they don't fit our mind of what American is? They're just as American as anybody else if they live here.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, if you live here, you're an American.
Yes.
So they see it and they're like, oh, that guy's different from what I see as an American. And especially where we here are in Texas, it's not as prominent. We see a lot of Hispanics, so that's a big thing. But if you go to countries that are big in Islam, you would see it's. I think that's what it has to do with. I think it's tribalistic. I think they just see somebody that's not them and associate them as bad.
You automatically exclude them. That's and that's a really deep and good point. Whenever I see stuff like this, whenever I see the news organizations putting someone or someone's race over another, it just always makes me think of them trying to push a certain situation or feeling on their audience. The news is very powerful and can make people feel or act certain ways, believe certain things.
We're doing, I believe, the next episode on that very topic.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that.
Fake news.
A lot of it we've seen in history. One of the first thing is reefer madness. The prohibition of marijuana, where people would make up terms of scaring people, saying it would make black men smoke marijuana and rape white women. It would make them rape your mothers and your sisters and your wives. That kind of thing. Pushing an agenda on issues like that. We see it. Trying to relate it together. I think it.
So that goes to why be a terrorist? What's your point? What are you accomplishing here?
Well, I think when you scare people more about there's terrorists here, there's terrorists there. Right now we've been in a how long has the war been?
Shoot,
Since
Bush.
Is it 16 years? 16-year war. It's
as long as I can
longer
remember.
than that.
I'm 22, so I was 6 when that started.
Yeah, most of my adult life, we've been in Iraq, and if you don't keep Americans scared, what have we not accomplished in 16 years? We've killed everyone we needed to kill there, supposedly, and I'm putting air quotations, and we've done what we needed to do, but why are we still there? For what reasons? And I think this fear-mongering of jihadists, that'd be the biggest thing. Our oil's there, and we're going to stay there till there's no more, till literally we suck the place dry. I think that's why a lot of the fear-mongering on the very low percentage of jihadist attacks is so great. They want to scare you and keep us in that war, so that way they always have that money going. Because statistically, wars have always funded our economy. Our economy has been the best right after a war's, right during a war or right after a war. The Roaring '20s
got us out of the recession.
Yeah, exactly. The Great Depression, things like that. It's helped us in many different ways.
So, we're speaking to motive here by saying war. If you cause a war with terrorism, you get money. Mm-hmm. But there is and we're gonna do a religion, I hope, soon.
Oh, that'll be an interesting topic.
Man, yeah. I love it. Okay, so
I would love to get a couple of guests on here actually. That'd be awesome.
We'll do a religion episode, but we'll just touch on it for a second here. That is huge with terrorism, religion. So my God's better than yours, and I'm gonna kill you for it.
Yeah,
has always been so dumbfounding to me on why that is the purpose. And then politics, obviously, is another reason. It's really that simple, I think. It's religion and politics.
Religion and politics, yeah. They
racial issues coincide with politics, so that's a thing.
And I don't want to blame it so much on religion, because I don't think religion is necessarily a bad thing. But
I disagree.
When you are able to control people with what they believe in and who they look up to, I think that's bad. Because it wasn't the priest of the Crusades saying, go kill out for God. It was the priest saying, we need more land for our people. Let's do it by God's will, And it's a little bit of, that was complete brainwashing back then.
I would like to see the turning point.
Yes.
From when it went from a comfort of life to know that you're going to live a better life after your life or whatever you believe.
Yeah.
To I'm going to kill you. There has to be either a smooth or harsh transition. And I would like to do some research and find out when that was and what caused it or what was going on in the world, because I don't understand religion at all anyways, but I don't understand killing each other over it. That's it. It's just me versus you. I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to kill you and just get rid of you.
It's a bunch of people they all believe the same thing, but their characters have been changed in names and styles, and everyone wants to prove that theirs are the best. And why?
Yeah. So most of us, I guess, we're American, so we can speak to the USA. Can't really speak for Britain because they don't really have definitely as much terrorism as us. Mm-hmm. But what's most common here?
I would say by way of mainstream media, exactly what we're talking about, jihadism. But clearly the numbers from Investigative Fund, have shown that jihadism isn't something that, as much as it's being pushed, isn't as big of a problem in our country. Of course, you never want a death. You don't want a unjust death, like Justin said before. But it is definitely something we need to keep an eye on, because if we're putting more and more funds into something that rarely happens, allocating our money isn't ever going to work.
We'll do a government budget too,
Yeah,
because we can rip into that too, I'm sure. So I would say statistically, obviously the most common here, as we have said throughout the whole episode, is right-wing extremism. And my two examples are going to be Charlottesville and Las Vegas, because they were both committed. One death in Charlottesville was too many, and Heather Heyer was not doing anything wrong. She got run over, unfortunately, and that was a right-winger. obviously probably a neo-Nazi, but I can't speak to him exactly. And then Vegas, with Stephen Paddock.
That was horrible.
That was,
I remember
in my
waking up to
lifetime, I feel like that was probably the worst violence incident I have ever personally paid attention to alive.
100% agreed. I remember waking up and, I got the new phone. I switched over to my Galaxy, and they have this thing called Bixby. And the alarm went off, and it was the first thing she said, breaking news, 500 dead in Las Vegas. And it's the first thing I hear waking up at 6:30, and I'm freaking out, thinking it's another 9/11.
And it's getting more and more common.
It is, and the first thing, me and my girlfriend, we roll over to each other and we said, oh my gosh, this happened again. Like, we are naturalized to it. We see these shootings.
Because Charlottesville wasn't, I don't know the dates, too far before that.
No, it wasn't.
And it got news. I'm not going to sit here and say that they don't report right-wing terrorism, because when 500 people die or get hurt or whatever the fatality count was at the end, they will report it. Just like Charlottesville and just like Vegas. But then you've got OKC in Boston and 9/11 and all them that also happened with Islams. So it is both sides have, right-wing and Islam, have their reported ones. But in terms of small scale, the only small scale I can think of is Charlottesville, where only one died.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot more to it, I think, than right and left. Whereas Islam is just as Islam, and they'll report it no matter what. So that's I think that's kind of hard to put into perspective for what actually is going on with the news and terrorism. It kind of puts you at a loss, because you don't know what to say, because it's hard to talk about Vegas, and it's hard to talk about Charlottesville, and it's hard to talk about Boston and 9/11, but somebody's got to talk about it.
Somebody always has to, and we look at it, and I'm trying to think back this entire time we're talking about a huge jihadist movement that the last time they really hurt people. And I'm sure if we post this, some people will make claims and say stories, and we could have hundreds of different people say they heard this, they heard that. But coming from I would say maybe independent progressive, if that even makes sense. Me following politics, in the past 2 years, I haven't heard very many of them. It's not something that has been common anymore. Definitely the right wing has taken over, and we've seen a lot of hate, and I think a lot of it has to do with racism. I think is still a big thing, part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I see the time. We got about 5 or 6 minutes here to talk about, but we want to transition to the next episode just so that we can get a cliffhanger going, because that's what gets you views, right?
All right.
But just to touch overall views on terrorism before we lead into the next one, or talk about Trump a little bit, because we got to talk about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add? Anything else to say you want to say that hasn't been said?
I just want to say I'm really smart, Justin.
Hey, aren't we all, man? Hey, on our first try too.
Yeah, we did this on our first try. This is our first podcast. It's fun, it's something new, and I look forward to doing it. Hopefully we keep putting out episodes, and we're gonna be putting these out on Mondays.
Hopefully.
We're gonna, hopefully. We'll say hopefully.
Weather permitting, news permitting. If something drops on a Sunday, we're gonna record on a Sunday.
Hopefully we can get it
dub
in
over and try to.
We will be covering the fake news awards. That'll be fun.
Because nowadays, there is no news day. It's just every day.
It's every day.
So if something comes out on a Sunday, we're gonna record on a Sunday. Well, today's Sunday, but we were a day late because somebody got sick.
Yeah,
we won't say which. Oh, you already did.
Yeah.
So we won't say which one it was, but
I've been sick. We're trapped in a tiny room, so if Justin gets sick, you guys.
Yeah, if we're
why.
late, it's Lewis's fault.
Yeah, it's my fault.
So, Trump. You want to touch on Trump just a little bit?
Yeah, let's touch on Trump
because we're gonna lead to the next topic for next week, which is fake news.
Fake news.
The best of all news.
I was really excited for that award ceremony tomorrow, but he changed it up, I guess.
Well, I hope Stephen Colbert wins. What did he change? Did he change something?
He said 3 hours ago he tweeted, "The fake news awards are going to be the most corrupt and biased of the mainstream media. Will be presented to the losers on Wednesday, January 17th, rather than this coming Monday. The interest in and importance of these awards is far, I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be far greater, is far greater than anyone could have anticipated."
It's a plural, so you'd say R.
Yeah.
But I guess that's how English works. I failed English,
Yeah.
but
That's our president for you, though.
well, I guess we'll have to stay tuned on that. I'm kind of rooting for Colbert. Trevor Noah put in a pitch.
Yeah, Trevor Noah.
Samantha Bee put in a pitch. John Oliver's absent, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I would love to see.
I'm surprised that he didn't get in there. Usually he's in on this type of stuff.
I think he's still on break.
Oh, really? How long is his break?
He stopped. Him and Bill Maher both stopped about the same time. They're gonna come back for New Year. I guess they're soon. I hope, because I like them both. But yeah. So we could just scroll through Twitter and see some stuff we want to talk about for Trump, because it's pretty easy to find some stuff. So we'll stick with the subject, fake news. He called out Jake Tapper on Twitter today. Just got destroyed in his interview with Stephen Miller of the Trump administration. Watch the hatred and unfairness of this CNN flunky. Oh, I want to say shout out to him for his Sloppy Steve nickname.
Yeah, Sloppy Steve is so funny.
Yeah.
I don't know who gives. He has to have like a secretary of nicknames, because he's put out.
So he can hire a secretary for nicknames, but not for AIDS.
Not for AIDS, not for what else did he not put? I can't even
does
name
he?
how many.
Kushner's national security, isn't he?
Yeah, he's national.
Or fixing the Middle East.
Yes, he's appointed to the Middle East. Yes, not national security.
So he also said, "I've had to put up with fake news from the first day I announced that I would be running for president. Now I have to put up with a fake book written by a totally discredited author. Ronald Reagan has the same problem and handled it well, so will I." He likes Reagan. He likes Ronald Reagan a lot. I wasn't alive, so I can't speak to Ronald Reagan's presidency, but I'm going to look up Michael Wolff, just on the fly right here. And
I'm interested to see if
I'm going to go to his Wikipedia and see if he's had any scandals.
If how long this Trump administration goes on for. I know me and you made a bet about him getting impeached. If he takes this fake kind of prefix that he's putting, fake news.
He's made his bet. He's got a line in it now.
Well, I want to see if he takes it as far as like fake Republicans, fake Democrats. Like if he starts calling people who turn against him, those fake, and he labels them as so. I want to see if that starts trending. That's going to be one of my predictions. I'm going to go off of Sink Uger and start making predictions on the show. Let's see if they're right or not.
Have at it, man. I win all the bets, so.
I know.
So Wolf was nominated for the National Magazine Award 3 times, winning twice.
Okay.
So that's pretty good. I'm just scrolling through his Wikipedia here, trying to find something. I will say, in fairness, he did have a critic for his book Burn Rate, which I've not heard of. It was a bestseller, but he got a critic from Brill's Content for apparent factual errors, saying that 13 people, including subjects he mentioned, complained that Wolf had invented or changed quotes.
Wow.
And we talked about quotes earlier.
Yeah.
So this is why you want to double-check quotes.
Definitely.
But he also won National Magazine Award, so, that's...
Sounds a little iffy.
Yin and yang. You gotta take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
So
there's always going to be good, and there's always.
I'm sure in the whole context of that book, there's some exaggerations.
Mm-hmm.
But where are the people that are quoted saying that they were misquoted?
Of course, yeah. You see Trump send a cease and desist. Why not send a slander or defamation? Why not make that type of lawsuit if these things are so outlandish? I personally haven't read the book. It's on my to-read list. So I really cannot wait to pick up the book. I'm probably going to hit up Books A Million and see if I can grab me a copy. Maybe buy it.
I have a sample right here.
Sweet.
But it's 55 pages. I don't really like his writing style, to be personally honest. But, yeah, it starts off prologue with Ailes and Bannon,
mm-hmm.
the late Ailes and Sloppy Steve.
Steve.
A tell-all book about Trump starts with the person he said had nothing to do with him. Okay. So, hey.
Well, we'll make this our weekly thing. we'll take a look at Fire and Fury, and along with the fake news segment next week, maybe we'll have some inserts or some more insight if you guys haven't picked up a copy, or if you guys
So you're going to make me read it?
You don't have to read it. You can look at Cliff Notes. I mean, we did it all through high school, so what's the point?
True.
So I will definitely get a little insight on Fire and Fury, whether I buy it or I'm looking at little excerpts of it.
And just to say, if you're still here, we're at the hour mark now. There's a couple things to be edited, so it may come down a little bit. We also got to record our intro.
True. Yeah, we got
so.
To do that too.
But anyways, if you've made it this far, you're awesome. Leave a comment, and we need criticisms.
Definitely, yes.
We need to know what we need to change because we've never done this. That's really it. We hope to have some guests. Fake news probably won't have any guests, but we can find a third topic that maybe we can find somebody with a differing opinion that can be civil.
Yes, yeah.
Because civility is important when debating.
We definitely don't want anyone here that's going to bring anger or a fight to this debate. We always want to be civil and talk and hear opinions and facts, of course, too. Justin, with a lot of your charts and numbers today, we can prove or disprove things.
I'm sure you can find some charts that disagree.
Of course, yeah.
That's kind of what we're going to try to get the bottom to next week with fake news, because it's weird how you can find two different charts, completely different numbers.
Different.
So I'll see if I can find some disputing charts.
How about we put a little segment of that in there, like two charts that say completely different things? But
we can try. We might reuse my charts and then try to find some throughout the week that dispute it and see if we can figure out why. Do some little investigative work.
Fox News, we're coming for you.
So, anyways, we'll try to keep these about an hour.
Yeah.
If you want longer, shorter, always tell us. Twitter handles
is going to be the Political Millennials, at the podcast PM. At the podcast PM.
Because Political Millennials was too long, PM podcast was taken, and PM podcast sounded stupid.
Yeah.
So the podcast PM, that's letters PM. Follow us, tweet us. Personal Twitter if you want to add yours.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, personal Twitter. I have mine. It's going to be Luis Garcia, LU 3 I's S Garcia, 3 I's being the third.
Because you're the third Luis Garcia.
Yes, of course.
And mine is just my name with no space, Justin Wilhoit.
How basic.
Let me spell that for you. Willhoit. So Justin, Willhoit. No underscore, no spaces, no dots.
When I type in your name, Justin Bieber comes up.
Yeah, and Timberlake.
Not a popular name.
I'd rather be Timberlake, though.
Yeah.
But anyways, so.
Well, that's going to be the end of the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we hope to see you on a weekly basis.
Comment, tweet, cuss us out. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care.
We'll gladly debate you.
Right.
See us on Rants and Raves.
You might get on an episode if you piss us off enough.
See you guys.